Pham. Welcome to today's conversation, 3 steps to valuing fears using the now approach of notice, observe, welcome with Anna Choi. Super excited that you are here for this conversation. So my name is Julie Pham. I am the founder and CEO of Curiosity Base. We help people practice curiosity in the world, starting in the workplace, because that is where we spend most of our waking hours. Now, we think of curiosity as a practice that we liken to meditation. It looks really easy, yet it's hard. And that curiosity, that practice of curiosity, is both inward and outward. And it comes down to self awareness, relationship building, and clear communication, which is why I'm so excited to have Anna on today, because a lot of her work is around noticing that inward, reflecting inward, so that we can be more effective outward with our relationship. So that inward and outward curiosity. So Anna and I have known each other. Gosh, has it been like 8 years?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, right? So, Anna, it's been so incredible to see your journey. So Anna and I first met as colleagues and now as friends. And Anna just has such an incredible, we talk about, oh yeah, there are people who are really interesting. Anna's really interesting. Anna's truly, genuinely, really interesting. She is the founder of Soul Joy, Forbes author, 2-time TEDx speaker. She is a Taekwondo Black Belt, so watch out. Don't get on Anna's bad side, right? A Qigong Tai Chi instructor and a singer-songwriter. What? All of those. Yes, and I remember actually when Anna was kind of emerging as a songwriter, and I got to hear you perform, and that was really special.
I was like, where was that? Was that?
It was like some Zoom thing.
The
And they
World
had
Peace
all these
concert, maybe?
Yeah. Yes. So, everything is a Zoom thing now. Anna brings 20 years as a social entrepreneur, energy master, and performing artist. She blends ancient wisdom, healing martial arts, and also creative expression, training thousands of students to feel more energy, to ignite their aliveness, and to unleash their brilliance. So we are so incredibly lucky to have Anna here today to share your wisdom. So Anna, can you also? Is there anything else that I missed that you'd like to share with the audience about your?
Yeah, as a social enterprise, we donate a vast amount of our profits towards our sister foundation, the Conscious Leadership Foundation, which helps fund full ride scholarships for teachers and educators to bring this brain power wellness, this body-brain connection, the mindfulness into the classroom for students. So that's a big deal that had started when my son was was in a bullying environment, I should say. And anyway, so we want world peace, can't happen until we have inner peace. And that's one way that we also serve that.
Indeed, we need to have inner peace before we can have world peace. So, we have known each other for quite a while, and what you're doing now is so different from what you were doing then. Can you just talk about how you came to this work?
Yes. So basically, I was a business coach. I was, financial advisor, event consultant. That's when we met. And then a business coach over the last 20 years. So when each time I was getting burned out, essentially, from every role, but it was a different burnout. I was like, oh, this time's physical. I collapsed on the floor. Another time I was emotional, kept crying all the time. Another time I was devoid. It was like soulless for me. So, everything was always off a little bit. And in this, as a business coach, I noticed with clients that, we'd work on, hiring a team, making more revenue, et cetera. But the source, like I always want to pinpoint the source, the root cause of what's not working was typically energy related. And it was burnout related. It could be showing up as health, could be showing up as, anger flaring up in relationships and losing one's temper, or, lots of different ways that it presents itself. So that's when I was like, And then was secretly kind of doing this energy work as a business coach for people. And
so you're secretly doing it like they didn't know that's what they were getting. Okay.
I didn't call that.
You're kind of trying it out on them. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Guinea pigs. But it was working. And the steps we're going to talk about today, I was doing it then about 4 or 5 years ago. So I was like, this works. And it kept, I really pride myself in making sure that it works over time for many different types of clients, for myself, and produces results before bringing it out, right? So I had already tested on myself when I brought it to them. But anyway, then the pandemic hit. As we all know, things got cray. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to be a cash flow specialist, which people overnight were turning over. I'll do the emotional resilience piece. So that's when I came full out of the closet, like, I'm an energy healer coach.
This is what you've been getting all along.
Yeah, I'm like, let's just bring it out, rebrand it, soul joy, all of it. So anyway, so that's what got created. And so we started frameworking what we saw was working with all the clients. And that's how Alive was born, which is both a program, but it's an acronym, ALIVE, and it's 5 different principles, energy principles that there's an arc that happens in a life cycle of energy. So first, if you're stuck in the hustle grind and burnout, then you gotta realize you have a problem, but B, you also want to be able to allow more yin to your yang. And that means being able to structurally create space for yourself to just think, right? How many of us just don't have time to think? We're so busy in the weeds. So as an entrepreneur, especially, or a business leader. So, it starts off on a big basis annually, like what can you, take vacation, like schedule it now. And I recommend a week off per quarter, if not 6 to 8 weeks. I took 10 to 12 is a little too much because you can't get a flow or rhythm. I'm like, okay, there is a such thing as too much. I like 6 to 8 is the sweet spot. And then that's on an annual basis, and then a quarterly basis, making sure you do retreats. I do retreats. We host retreats, etc. And then on a monthly basis, getting, just 1 or 2 days off, even if you go into silence at home or however that looks for you, going offline. And then weekly, typically Sundays are days people are offline. And then daily, making sure you have 1 to 2 hours every morning for your self-care, like that. So that's what allow you more yin to yang is. Then listening within is about, like, the arc of the energy was like, once you've created space, now you need to go inside. And so listening to the ego, more, or, or the soul. And there's a way to start empowering the soul and strengthening that voice, that it's louder than the whole inner committee in there, and that can have the ego almost work on behalf of the soul. That's a whole other teaching.
Is that like that? Is that the repressing the inner critic, or is that something else?
No, it's very, that's could present as an inner critic, but there's sometimes just the hurt little child. I mean, there's like so many archetypes, right? But there's a really good book actually called Yes, Yes, Hell No by Brian Whitaker. He's this PhD that had, was a startup in Silicon Valley, made it really big, and then something was always off. But anyway, that framework is, I won't go too into it because that's a whole other conversation, but that's like, if you listen to your intuition or your gut, another name for it, and then you listen to your logical brain, and then you listen to your fear. And a lot of times you get a yes, yes, and then a hell no from your fear, which indicates that's actually a yes, that you need to move forward, but it can be confusing if you're getting mixed signals from inside. Anyway, so that's listening within. And then Inspire Soul First is about, now that you've gone inside and you're clearing and cutting through the noise, what can you do to keep connecting back and strengthening that relationship to your true self, to your soul, to your higher power? And having a morning ritual or evening ritual for your night owl that allows you to ground for the rest of the day, then just like check off, the things, the workout and everything you need to do. And then once you're developing that relationship, obviously there's going to be challenges along the way. So that's where valuing fears comes into play. It's how do we deal with all the crap that comes up and powerfully deal with it, then repress, fix, overcome. Instead, like actually fully feel it, which we'll talk about how to do that. And then E is then maintenance mode. It's like, okay, how do we develop those healthy habits beyond 100 days, right? That can, we do a lot of 5-day challenges, 100-day challenges, etc., to really allow you to have your energy literally circulating and mastering that energy management, because we all have 24 hours a day, but obviously some people are able to accomplish a whole lot more. Why is that? It's usually how they manage their energy.
I love this framework, and it makes me think about, I remember when I finished my first year of business, I realized that one of the lessons learned was that I was managing my energy versus my time.
Yes.
That when I was an employee, I was managing my time. Like I need to show up at these meetings and block up and show that I look how busy I am. And then now as an entrepreneur, I manage my energy and I think about, okay, is this the best use? Because I know, for example, for me, morning time is best for me to do my kind of creative thinking time. So I'm not going to exercise during that time. Actually, that's the time I need my brain space.
Yes.
So yeah. So yes, what you're doing around energy really resonates with me. And also the curiosity based team, we actually take a week-long break as a team. Not together, but like at the same time every quarter. And that rest really is so important. It's so important.
Love it. Love that you built it into the culture.
Yeah. So I reached out to you because I saw something that you posted on LinkedIn, by the way. For those of you who follow Anna's LinkedIn, really great content there all the time. And you had this, you brought up micro fears, and I was really intrigued by that. So today we're going to focus this conversation on valuing fears, because I know a lot of time people talk about conquer your fears, and you're saying value your fears. So can you talk about what micro fears are?
Yes, but first I'm going to speak on, it used to be vanquish fears.
Vanquish fears, okay.
Until it's an evolving thing, right? Because the work is informing the principles. So the frame of mind that you have is going to be in fear, ironically, if you need to vanquish something. So valuing fears is literally coming from love. And if you picture fears like little children that you're taking under your wing, very different picture, right? They're going to hug. That's how the perspective in mind of valuing fears, that embodies the principle, if you get it.
I would not think about valuing and hugging my fears. So,
right?
So you just put it in a totally different image for me.
It is. And it's fascinating just with you now in that awareness. If you start thinking from there, I'm just being curious about it, right? In inquiry, then it'll start to manifest in how you respond differently. Like curiosity, like, oh, maybe I could, what's the lesson here? What is it teaching me? Not in hindsight, but as it's happening, especially when it's more of a body response and reaction. So that's where micro fears comes in, is super subtle. So initially when I teach this in our, group coaching program, clients are looking at what I call macro fears or bigger fears. And that could be like speaking in public, going bungee jumping, whatever. But those aren't what you deal with necessarily day to day. It could be like a bigger, overarching thing that you're avoiding. But the people I'm working with are such high achievers. They've kind of conquered a lot of those big ones, right? So now the game gets very subtle, with that cutting edge in not just their performance per se, but expressing their soul's true voice. So some examples of micro fears could be like being seen as a complainer. So there's I recommend people do this, but we did this in the group, is make a list of all your fears. So there might be some big macro ones, but also write the teeny tiny ones. And these are, maybe not fears. You don't even call them that. You call them a trigger. You call them an annoyance. It could be a recurring thought is a micro fear, actually. Any sort of, it's just off, like write that down. And I really like the recurring thoughts, because that's your programming. So we need to go into the subconscious and work with that. And then what they did after they made the list is to go after them every day. Like we'd play a game, like let's go after 5, get 5 points today. We're going after your fears.
You gamified it.
And then we apply the 3 steps, which we'll talk about in a moment, for any big ones that are harder. But the little ones are funny, because if you just start taking action with them, a lot of times you don't have to do the now step. The now is more for bigger ones, but they can be for little ones. And you can get really fast at the steps. So it's like happens in a half a second versus like 5 minutes. So anyway, micro fears, some examples could be like, and these are personal ones that I dealt with in the field, so to speak, that I was shocked at what difference they made. But being seen as a complainer, especially I would think for Asian Americans, and at least culturally, there's I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think it's a broader conversation. When it comes to like authority, I don't want to be seen as a complainer. It's not that I need to collectively go along with everybody all the time and conform. It's not really conformity. It's more like you keep the peace. There's a reason and a design why the authority figure is saying something. But if there's an issue, Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
you brought up, how do you do it productively in a way that you're not going to be seen as a complainer? So for me, my default mode would be to like say nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Model minority it
Mm-hmm.
and suppress that. Or being seen as demanding, right? So this could be just with colleagues, not an authority figure, but I'm clear what I want, but I'm not sure how to say it. And so that stops me. So I end up not, I water it down what I really want.
Anna, that's so interesting because when I think about complaining, because it's like, is that a micro fear for me? And I wonder, and as you were saying, authority figure, is that something that you see? Because I know you work with a lot of CEOs. Is that something you see with CEOs, or is that something you see more with employees? I mean, is there kind of a position in because I mean, I can imagine having that fear when I was an employee, but maybe not so much as being the head of
Ah,
or maybe I think more about being demanding versus like a complainer.
very interesting. So yes, obviously there's a default kind of dynamic as an employee to do
Mhm.
that because they're afraid they're going to lose their job or whatever. I am the same as a CEO. Like, it's not to my team, I don't have that fear, but I do still CEO to CEO, or sometimes in the client relationship, or if you're in some sort of association group and there's like the internal unspoken leaders of influence. I find
Mhm.
myself not wanting to be seen as a complainer with them unless they're on my inner circle that I share. Does that make sense? So there's
So it
like
depends on the
broader
context, it
dynamic.
depends on the situation, right? Because we actually do behave and interact differently, have different expectations when we're in different groups of people.
Yes.
So, I mean, when I was going through this list of like the rejection, being seen as insensitive, I know something that comes up for me is just being seen as selfish. Because sometimes I'm actually pretty good about being very specific about what I want. And
Yes.
sometimes I feel like, gosh, my ask is like, it's very tailored to me, and are people gonna think that I'm self-serving? And I've had that actually. I was on the opposite end of that recently when I was visiting a friend. I said, "Hey, what would you like?" And she was so specific, and I so appreciated it,
Mm,
right? And yet I know if I were that specific, I mean, I'd still do it, but there'd be this micro fear of like, "Gosh, are they gonna perceive me as being really selfish here?"
mm, mm. Totally. Yes. If it For you in that situation, right, it's about just being at peace with
Mhm,
that thought if it comes up, or not having the thought
mhm,
occur because you're in a different frame.
mhm,
But yes, if you can pay attention to the thoughts, right, it'll direct people if they're having trouble finding what is my micro fear. Um, again, that recurring thought is a good
mhm.
place to start. And then if you apply the steps, then being able to have peace.
So let's
Peace.
talk about these steps because I know you have these 3 steps, this now approach to valuing fears. Can you walk us through it, please?
Yes. So the first step is notice. There it
Mm,
is. Very good. And the O is observe. W is welcome. You can read it on the screen if you're watching. And really, if when you're noticing something, it's you have to be conscious and
mhm, mhm,
aware. Simple, but not always happening. So even if today, the rest of the day, you just kind of notice, what are my thoughts occurring? What's being unspoken? What is my feeling? It's not just thoughts, but feelings, emotions, and body sensations. So this is where you notice it, and then observing it is then not fixing it, overcoming it,
mm,
trying to do something with it, which most of us want to do, or suppress it, or ignore it, or avoid or deny it. You just want to observe it, like do just allow. You're just allowing it,
mm,
and more importantly, you're feeling the energy 100%. And then the W is welcome, which is, I don't even go to the third step with clients. When I first train people on this, we
mm.
just do the first two, and you can have a lot of success just with the first two. But the third step is like advanced mastery. Or because if you the pitfall here is if people jump to welcome, it becomes a fix. So you have to authentically
Right,
have gone through
right,
the
right.
second step of like not attached, equanimous, and then now you're welcoming and out of a creation from nothing versus a reaction to fix it. That's the big pitfall. So welcoming is like where you truly, back to that picture of the little children of fears, hugging
Mhm,
them. It's where you're hugging them. You're
mhm,
welcoming them to your heart. You can
mm,
literally do this with your hands, and imagine placing the little fear into your heart, and imagine your heart like this huge ass sun that's like burning bright. And so when you bring it the fear is like this tiny little think. It doesn't. Imagine that at the source, it's good. Like at the source, it's trying to communicate something. It's teaching you. It's surfacing for a reason, so that you can move through it versus continue to suppress it or resist it or avoid it or whatever you do with it. Everybody has their own flavor. So you then place it in and you can breathe through it. The typical box count of inhale, 3 or 4 counts, whatever is your flow, hold, and then exhale, and then hold. That gets you back into the parasympathetic, rest, digest state in your nervous system. And then you can then imagine, a brighter, it could be memory or future memory of something that just makes you smile right when you picture it and see it. And so then you recalibrate back to your true north. So there's a lot of steps to that last part, but really the first, most people can start to notice it. The first step is hard if you are numb to your body, which most people are. I mean, they can hear, like if they get hurt or injured, that's when they pay attention to the body. They're not being proactive and preventive about feeling their organs, for example. Like people don't think about feeling or exercising their organs, but in our Qigong and healing martial arts practice, like that's really critical to see where it's getting already stressed out, right? So with Chinese medicine, there's different organs that have different emotions that get processed. So like the liver is not just alcohol filtering, it also filters anger. And when I have a fight, I swear, like I feel it like cramping. It's like overload. Wow. All the hormones coursing through from anger, cortisol is just being flooded. And there's like little, exercises you can do to just clear it out. But that's me noticing, right? Like these subtle, just like microfears, you got to notice the recurring thoughts. You got to notice also the body sensations that are happening in the body, not overt, gross, big injuries, right?
So Anna, can you walk us through, share an example of a client you worked with or someone you worked with and they came to you with this, especially it's interesting that you said a lot of people want to get to that W, right? They want to just fix it. So yeah, can you give us an example?
Yes, I usually like to actually just walk people through right now on the call, but as far as client story examples, so let's go back to, I'm like, let's work with you.
Yeah, you can work with me. It's fine.
So I'll give one story. So so being seen as a complainer, right? So with the micro fears, like the most direct step that essentially is doing now, but in a sweeping move, is to just take the action and know that that's the correct signal and make the complaint, right? Which typically when I was doing this and my clients were doing this, they were surprised to find, it doesn't even come off as a complaint. That's just my own.
Oh yeah. I see what you're saying.
It's just a powerful
like how it's going to be perceived. And then it's just like, oh, that doesn't sound like a complaint at all, actually.
Yeah. A lot of these are phantom fears. A lot of our micro fears are phantom. They're not even real. Like nobody would even agree with them. So like, Julie, you're like the most selfless person I know. You always put others first. Like it's ironic, right? Like that you'd wonder if that occurred as selfish, but it just doesn't because your heart shines through. So anyway, but if there's something like right now for people watching or watching the replay, think, and for yourself, Julie, and then I'll kind of work with you, is what's a micro fear that you have. So you're like, okay, being seen as selfish, which is kind of more of an afterthought that happens. But I want to work maybe with something in your body because it's a little easier to illustrate. So is there any pain, tension, numbness in the body, like maybe the neck or the back or something? So just scan the body and then just kind of see if there's like a little, people have chronic headaches. They've got all sorts of things. Hip, it could just be very subtle. So if you do a body scan, do you feel, just tune in, and do you feel any part of the body that's just a little off? And if you don't, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I can just walk.
Or maybe like my tailbone right now. So.
It's funny because my brother-in-law just can't even walk. It went crazy on the tailbone too. Okay. So go to that area, and with the first step of notice, that's what we just did. We just noticed. Okay. Number 2 is observe it. So I'm going to ask you like what shape, what texture, what color is that? If you had to put a color to it, or a shape of that energy that's in the tailbone, what would it be?
I think it'd be like a little square, a little rectangle, something like this size.
Perfect. Is it moving or static?
It's static.
Is it what color?
Like a carbon black.
Good, carbon black. And then is there texture to it? Like
It's smooth.
it's smooth? Okay, ethereal or like dense, light?
No, it's like a plastic disc or something like that.
This is amazing, right? How people
Yeah,
know.
you're asking
We're
about
very
talking me through it,
specific
yeah.
on if we do this. So now we're observing. And what happens to the brain as we're observing is that you're not psychoanalyzing, why do I have this pain? Or trying to like do something to it. We're just observing it, right? Allowing it to be. And in that allowing, then we can accept. So welcoming into the heart. So now just take that. There's a couple ways you can do this. But if you take that energy and just imagine kind of, you can actually take your hands and like scoop it up, place it into the heart. Just imagine that little dust going into this bright, like imagine your heart is this huge fiery sun. And then put it in there. And that's the third step of welcoming. And then depending on how much you feel, so what I wanted to do it kind of quickly so you could just
yes. I know that you normally do this over much.
Yeah, you can either do much longer and slower, and also much quicker. So it just depends on the level of pain. So the bigger the pain is, or emotion, or thought pattern, the longer it typically takes. Doesn't have to. It could be instant, but in general.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna.
I was going to add one more piece.
Okay,
sorry,
yeah,
that's good. Is if you did you feel it? So the main thing in the second step too is to feel it 100%. So most people are resisting, I know this sounds funny, but they're resisting the feeling of the pain. It's like, you know what I'm saying? So just for a moment, fully feel that black disc and see if it moves. Okay, don't worry about it moving, just fully feel it 100%.
I feel it.
Okay, good. And now like, just allow it, like just 100% feel it, not 90%, 100%. Got it? 100%?
Yeah, I feel it. So kind of a little to the left, I feel it. It's like
Good.
this little like nudge.
Okay, good. And as you continue, if we were to keep going and going, I would keep asking, okay, what's the texture now? What's the shape now? What's the color now? And it typically 90%, it starts to morph. And sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. Sometimes it's so fascinating what people's bodies, like everybody's so different in how they.
Yeah, I can actually imagine it kind of being a little more squishy and like malleable now, rather than being super dense.
Yes, and if you keep just focusing and observing, it'll continue to shapeshift. Then you can go to a good area, part of the body, and feel that, and then you just give yourself like a brain refresh, and then go back to it, and it'll keep morphing. And you don't have to do it till it's gone, because the practice is you just allowing it. That's the gold here, is step 2. Then once you get really good with that, then you can start and like going to 3.
Anna, thank you so much for walking me through that. It's really interesting to think about how I actually did have this image. Once you started asking me those questions, I had never thought about it before, but it was actually a kind of a something physical that I imagined there.
Energy, yeah.
So, well, you know what I realized is like I didn't invite audience members to ask questions. So, hey, audience, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. And while you're thinking about that, I want to ask, how is this relevant to both organizational leaders and to employees? How can people use this in the workplace?
Totally. So it's a little different, right? If you're a leader or a CEO, then really, and I'm going to connect this into emotional intelligence, because fear obviously is a huge type of emotion that has many subcategories under it. And I'm like, every single thing I say, I could go down a huge rabbit hole. So I'm trying to keep myself on track.
This is where, don't worry, audience, you will be able to stay in contact with Anna and get more information.
But we're waiting for questions. Anyways, I'll go down the rabbit hole a little bit. So, there's a great TEDx talk actually on this, of this doctor talking about how, in general, this is my paraphrase, adults don't mature past like the age of 9 when it comes to their emotions. And if you ask them a simple question, how do you feel? Good or bad? Okay, if you ask this again to an audience, you might come up with like 12. happy, sad, glad,
Mhm.
upset. But there's like 3,000 emotions.
Yeah. It's so true.
So the degree to which we're able to like articulate the nuances of the 3,000, right, is the degree to which we have our emotional intelligence. And so with your fear, it's not just like, I'm scared. Like, okay, great. But there's like a nuance to it, right? Is it
Mhm.
annoyance? Or is it like grief? Or is it like,
Mm.
terror? There's a whole spectrum. And so um, that's just a bit on what emotional intelligence is and how micro fears play into that, as because most people aren't attuned to the subtlety, right? So when you have the thought, I'm selfish, how does that make you feel, Julie? Like, for example,
Mm.
you should be
Yeah,
like, uh,
I mean, it starts like bad, but then you're talking about like what's the nuance, right? Just like a
yeah.
burden. Yeah. Mhm.
So you
And so
keep
to
going
think
down.
about
If you kept asking yourself, okay, how do I feel? And you're like burden, you're like, that's quite kind of too heavy. Maybe,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I'm kind of embarrassed, right? Maybe it's just
Mhm.
a little like, oh, so as you nuance that, then this will impact obviously your decisions as a leader and your decision making. So uh, this is how it's relevant. If you want to know how to make better decisions, if you want to be more adaptable to a situation when conflict arises or new unknowns, which is our world today, AI, everything. If you
Mhm.
want better employee engagement so that they feel safe around you, and just in general to be a good role model of displaying a great emotional intelligence, obviously that's going to set the tone and the culture in a workplace and foster more emotional resilience as a good thing, a good measure, a good metric of a healthy team.
Mhm.
But if you're a employee, right, then or a solopreneur or a
Mhm.
team
Mhm.
member, then how microfears and emotional intelligence can help you obviously manage your own stress when it's coming up, so it doesn't get suppressed and then explode later. It can help with just more effective solution finding when a problem arises, where instead of reacting, you can now it.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
And just feel all you're doing is like really accepting and allowing it. I mean, that's like the gist of it. And in doing so, you can flow through. And then it helps with collaboration and teamwork so that you're more easier to be with because you have that higher level of understanding in the nuances, and then just in your own personal growth and development in whatever's next for you. This is a big critical asset, especially since pandemic, but as we move into this, AI Web3 world, I think as well. So anyway, those are some ways that that it's relevant. Um,
It
and then,
sounds a lot just like around self-regulation. It's just like how do you give employees the tools to help themselves, and how do you as the leader also model that too? Because whatever the leaders do, they are, whether they realize it or not, they're modeling the behavior for their employees. So even just by doing that, they can actually teach their employees how to do that too. Sometimes it doesn't have to be this formal training. It could just be, hey, are you doing it? Because if you're doing it, then other people will see you doing it.
yes,
And I can see how that actually saves a lot of probably a lot of spinning, right? Because otherwise we do a lot of, oh, is it this? I'm imagining these conversations, and that slowing down. Yes, I think about that a lot, just how much we could benefit from just slowing down. We don't have to
yes.
react right
It's
away.
always a good thing to slow down,
Mhm.
relax. And I bet
So
when, yeah,
yeah. So Anna, I have so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing so much. And yet I know, I mean, you told me that like the slide deck was like 200 slides or something. I know that there's so much more, right? And you offer so much. So I want to share with the audience different ways that they can stay in touch with you and get and learn more about your work.
excellent. So yeah, our website, souljoy.life, SOL, no U, is a perfect place to get lots of free resources. There's access to our social channels, such as our YouTube channel, where we have a really great boost your energy video training series. And this is like for anyone just starting out, it's a perfect place to learn the basic principles of water up, fire down, which we briefly touched on in the E of Alive on energizing your daily flow. But it kind of walks you through the basics physically in your body so you can keep making that mind body integration. And then at the end of that series, you also see a video, a sneak preview of what the 40 Days to Aliveness class is. And this is, I love this program. It's like the best of the best. It's been gleaned over so many years. Hundreds of people have taken it. and it's a college accredited now. So it's, listed in
Wow.
different universities. But anyway, you can take it, and we just look at your mind, heart, your physical power, your heart power, your mind power, and your spiritual power, spirit power. And then we integrate it all. So that's each of the 5 weeks. It's just like half an hour a week. So very easy for especially busy professionals or high achievers. And then from that course, we have other programs. But anyway, that's a good starting place. So if anybody's more interested, they can, look at the website, get the resources, and then set up a one-on-one call with me. Happy to connect and see how I can help.
Anna, thank you so much. I loved how you laid that out on all of these different different accessibility, right? Like there are all these different points where they can engage with your work. And I've just so enjoyed this conversation. I just love learning and seeing what you're doing now. Just you have unleashed your brilliance out into the world. So it's so special to get to share this with a longtime friend. So, well, with that, thank you so much, audience, for being with us. And you can connect with Curiosity Base and get our weekly newsletter where you can find out more about talks like this. And you just scan that code. And thank you so much.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. You're the best.